Good morning, everyone. Thanks to Raman and the DePaul folks for putting this fabulous event together, and thank you for including me. I'm so happy to be here. As Raman mentioned earlier on in the introductions, some of the people who are presenting today may have gone through kind of their own breakthroughs, trying to identify their breakthroughs, and I definitely fall into that camp. I think what I've identified is that life is a series of breakthroughs, and it was very challenging for me to identify just one. So I'm going to talk about some of the breakthroughs over the past several years that have gotten me to the point that I'm at today. Brian? So here's a picture of one of my heroes, and there are several. This is my grandfather. Not really sure why he wears the Yankees hat. Jay-Z has a quote about that Jay-Z made the Yankees more famous than the Yankees by wearing the hat. I think my grandpa would like to think that he's done that as well. My grandfather, we refer to him as Papa Joe. He's the sort of head of our family. If we were Italian, maybe he'd be in the mob, but we're not. My grandpa started his entrepreneurial journey when he dropped out of middle school in 8th grade. He was not a conformist. He was not someone who did well in the classroom, and he realized that early on. So he dropped out of school. He went into the Army at a very young age, and when he came back from the Army, he decided that he wanted to work for himself. Something that was really popular during that time frame and was kind of emerging was having bread delivered to your home. So my grandfather was an opportunist, and he was able to identify an opportunity at that point in time where someone that he knew actually died and gave up a bread route. So he got together all the money he could possibly scrape up, which was $2,500 at that time, borrowed money from everyone he knew, took the $2,500 and bought the truck and the route for the bread delivery. An interesting side note to that is that my grandfather has told me, I've asked him about this story quite a bit, and he has recently told me that the delivery and the logistics and the getting product from A to B is really the exciting part of any business. Bread was never his passion. It was just the product that he was delivering. So he bought the bread route. He started a company. A couple years later, he paid back every dollar that he borrowed. That was the first thing he did with every dollar that he earned, was to pay that out. And that's something that he's taught me as well, which is don't owe anyone anything. If you want to be successful, it should be yours. And that's something that I've followed, and it has definitely not always been easy. Somebody mentioned bootstrapping earlier. Yeah, these boots were definitely made for walking. I've been bootstrapping for almost 8 years now with my company. But that's definitely something that I learned from my grandfather. Next slide. So what I did after school was what a lot of people do, unfortunately for me and for other people, is I went back home. I was in Europe for a few months after I graduated, and I had no money. I had nowhere to go. So, hi, Mom and Dad, I'm back. That was what led me to one of my very first sales jobs, selling beer as a cocktail waitress at an Irish pub. That was a good indicator to me that I did not want to stay in Detroit, first of all, and I did not want to sell beers for the rest of my life. So my first sales job led me to where I went next, which is the wonderful city of Chicago, where we are right now. I came to Chicago with not a lot of money, not a lot of expertise. I was a liberal arts major in college, never thought about business, never really thought about what I was going to be when I grew up. But I figured Chicago is the land of opportunity, right? Something will happen here. Well, it didn't, and I waited tables when I got here as well. Did that for a while. And then this big new thing called the internet kind of came around. And a friend of mine came to me, and she basically said, there's this company called Apartments.com, which is actually owned by Classified Ventures, if anyone knows Classified Ventures. And they're owned by the Tribune, and they're doing this internet thing, and they'll hire anyone. And I went, great, that's me. I'm the guy that just needs to get hired by someone who's hiring anyone. So I showed up for the interview. The CEO of Apartments.com hired me on the spot to be his assistant. And I was like, I don't know what that means to be someone's assistant, but I'll figure it out and I'll do a great job. I came into work the first day. By day 2, he said, "You're not an assistant, you're a salesperson. It's in you, it's kind of who you are." So within a month from that time frame, I was 23 years old. I was flying all over the country selling this interactive product to newspaper advertisers all over the country who were working with the Tribune and several other newspaper companies to buy classified ads or buy print ads, and we are now offering them this very cool interactive product. So that was kind of an exciting time. Next slide, please. But I had this fear inside of me that I was going to lose who I was. How do you maintain the person that you are? How do you keep your character? How do you stay true to yourself? How do you not go corporate when you're, walking through O'Hare with your wheelie bag, jumping on the next flight to LA, staying in nice hotels, riding in nice cars? I was making good money, which I was happy about, but I wanted to stay the person that I was. And I knew that I couldn't work for someone else forever. But I didn't have any ideas. So I stuck it out for a while. Next company the next notable company, there were a few in between, that I landed at was America Online. A little dancing yellow guy. You guys might remember them from the 90s. They are actually still in business, AOL. At that time, when I was there, AOL was an internet service provider. A lot of people were using AOL. We were selling local advertising, so I was going out to local Chicagoland companies, selling them ads within the AOL space. So you're at home on your computer, you log into your AOL, you're getting ads from local businesses. I was selling that. What I wasn't aware of, though, at this time, and this was in probably around 2000, 2001, is this little thing called search. All my clients and customers were asking me, hey, these banners and buttons and sponsorships, these are great, but how do I get listed on that search page when somebody goes in and they type in, Chicago hotel? And I said to myself, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And that was my biggest breakthrough. I've always been a little bit of a risk taker. Adam talked earlier about, sort of taking the time to put everything together and really understand how you're going to make money and what you're going to, do later on. Yeah, I didn't do any of that. I just jumped in. I said, there's something with this search. This search thing is special. People go on to their computer on their own will, their own free will. They type something in, and they click on whatever pops up. And you can advertise. You can be an advertiser in that space, and people won't even know. People know now, but in 2000, nobody knew. So I decided to take that risk. Everybody was asking. I decided that I was going to create a company around search. People always ask me why my company is named Marcel Media. It's actually kind of a funny story. I was working at AOL, and AOL at that time was, again, delivering those local ads within the AOL network. What AOL wasn't very good at was placing the right ads in the right places, in the right geographic locations. So a lot of advertisers were upset about their ads showing up outside of Chicagoland. One advertiser in particular, his name was Marcel. He owned a racetrack, and you saw I have an affinity for race car driving anyhow, so he was one of my favorite clients. He was a CPA by day, and he owned a racetrack by night. And Marcel was advertising with AOL his racetrack business. He wanted people from Chicago to find out about this racetrack. It was up in Wisconsin. It's still there, actually. It's just over the border. And he was running some banners with us. Banners were not showing up in Chicago. So he demanded that I bring in a suit from corporate, from the AOL offices in Dulles, Virginia, fly the guy in, bring him into my office. I said, okay, great. So I brought the guy in from, he was actually from New York. He came in. I told him, we're going to meet with this client. He's not very happy, but I'm sure it'll go fine. We walked in, and Marcel, I kid you not, wore brass knuckles. He had a baseball bat right behind him on the desk. He had no computer in his entire office. He smoked nonstop. He lit one cigarette after the next. He never stopped smoking. He ashed all over the floor. And he read this guy the riot act. And from that moment on, I really liked Marcel. So when I decided to start my company, I went to Marcel and I told him my idea. And he said to me, it's brilliant, I love it, I fully support you. And I told him I wanted to use his name. And he just started laughing. Yeah, right, sure, you go right ahead. So I started the company, I used the name, and fast forward a few years, Marcel actually showed up at my office. And he was there by accident for another appointment with another company, and he saw the name on the door, Marcel Media. And he went, you have got to be kidding me. Dialed it up, came up to my office. I didn't even know he was there. I was on a conference call, pacing around my office. I look up, and I see this mullet and this open shirt with big gold chains. I'm like, that's Marcel. It's been like 5 years. And he was absolutely floored. He couldn't believe that I had created this company. He's walking around, you got printers and people and computers and business cards. Oh my God, your name's Marcel. He was really excited about it, so that was cool. At that point, when I first started the company, really my idea was all I needed was some caffeine and a cell phone, right? Anybody else have that early on? Yeah, definitely. So that was, I like this image of kind of the early days. I was at Starbucks. I was actually at Starbucks in the middle of Cabrini Green, which I highly recommend. Very motivating to try to make some money when you're working out at Cabrini Green. And that leads me to my affiliation with the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, which you may or may not have heard of in the past. EO has really continued to reaffirm some of those early on breakthroughs that I've had. And a couple of speakers in particular really, really stuck out to me and really helped kind of reaffirm the path that I was on and am still on. Mark Eaton is one of them. Mark Eaton played for the Utah Jazz. A couple people are nodding. Maybe you've heard this story. He's a very, very powerful speaker. He doesn't have a big ego. He doesn't have some of the sort of stage power that some other speakers might have, but his story is fantastic. He's 7'4". His website is 7foot4.com if anyone's ever interested in learning more about Mark Eaton. And he never played basketball. He probably didn't play baseball either. He was actually a mechanic working in a garage, and a coach, found him and would not leave the man alone until he agreed to try out for whatever team it was at that time. He ended up working, with the Utah Jazz and really didn't understand the game, didn't have a knack for it. He just had his size. He was huge. And it took a fellow huge man by the name of Wilt Chamberlain, which you've probably heard of, to take him aside and say to him, you are huge, you are not fast, you do not score baskets. That little guy on your team, John Stockton, he's the little fast guy that scores. He's the guy that shoots baskets. Your job is to get everybody else out of his way. Let him be the hero. And that stuck with Mark Eaton forever, and that's a big part of what he talks about. I love the concept, know your job. And that's a big breakthrough for me, and I talk about it with my employees constantly. You don't always have to be the hero. You don't have to be the top salesperson. You don't have to be the one that everybody cheers for at the company meeting. You have to do your job. And Adam talked also about when you identify someone who is not in that role, the hardest part sometimes as an entrepreneur is to make those decisions. But I think it's important. Another person who had a profound effect on me and came to me through EO is DeWitt Jones. DeWitt Jones is a photographer for National Geographic. He is, without question, the best speaker I have ever witnessed in my life thus far. And I've seen, Jim Collins and a lot of the business guys, Guy Kawasaki and Avinash Kashik is awesome, who's in my industry, and a lot of really, really powerful speakers. This man changed my life. He talks a lot about vision and about understanding where you are in the present and finding opportunities that live within that space. And he talks about celebrating all that is right with the world. And I think oftentimes when you're an entrepreneur, when you're trying to run your business, you're trying to build your life, it's very hard to remember the good things and to celebrate those things. And that's a big part of what DeWitt Jones talks about. That was another breakthrough for me. Celebrate all that is right in the world. My company at this point has been around almost 8 years. Amazingly, somehow we made it through the last couple of years, which was not easy, very difficult. One of the things I'm most proud of is my client list, which I built pretty much from scratch. A lot of these clients were with us in 2003 and somehow, amazingly, are still with us today. So that's a real achievement and something that I think helped make us who we are today. And most importantly, more important than anything else, is the fact that I, through all of this, have been able somehow to create a beautiful, warm, happy family as well. So I'm the mother of 2 little girls, the wife of a crazy man who wears a rainbow afro. I'm the CEO of this company, and I'm also now running the EO Chicago chapter. Thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it.